Well, hello, my lovely haunted historians. How are you? I hope you've enjoyed the show so far this year. If you haven't listened to the last one I did with Kat Irving, please do give it a listen because I'm actually going to mention the Murder Act in this show as well. So, trying to bring you something a little bit different and people you may not have heard from. I'm going paranormal with a paranormal Viking on this show, and we're going to be talking about a place called Kenton Theatre, which is in the lovely Henley upon Thames, or is it Henley on Thames? I'm not sure. Chris, help me out. Is it Henley upon Thames or Henley on Thames?
I think the official is Henley upon Thames.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, the official, but everyone shortened it to Henley on Thames.
Ah,
Yeah, but if you read the signs, it says Henley upon Thames, I think.
home of the regatta.
Yes, I'm in the regatta. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So you
Those-
might have guessed Chris is the paranormal Viking. And we met for the first time last November in Leeds at the very chilly Spook and
Yeah.
Spirit Fest. Which actually there's another one being held in this September if you want to check out the tickets. I will be attending that one, as will Chris. We must have made a good impression on them. They've asked us back.
Yeah, yeah, they have, haven't they? So bless them. Yeah, that was an amazing event, and meeting all you guys was just amazing. It was my first Paracon event, and it was everything I expected. So everyone was warm, welcoming, even though it was freezing cold. Like I
Well, the
said, I mean,
people
the
were warm, the
temperature was.
place wasn't. I don't think I've ever had to
Oh
keep my coat on during one of those events for the whole day ever.
no, and I mean normally sort of, and I think sort of they probably went through a whole box of tea bags because everyone
Yeah,
was just going to the kitchen every 5 minutes trying to get something warm down.
yeah.
But it was almost it was almost unnaturally cold.
Yes, the place was it was cool, if you pardon the phrase. A cool
Yeah,
place, though. It was a fascinating place. But I know how cold it was that though the exotic insects and stuff that were there, like the spiders and everything
yeah.
else that were there, she had to leave early because she couldn't get their temperatures up and they were starting to stop moving, which shows you how cold
Yeah,
it
yeah,
actually
that, and
was.
they were in yeah, controlled environments, weren't they? They were in
Mm.
tanks and everything. Yeah,
They're
and
in
it was,
tanks and she got separate heaters. She had three or four heaters around them to try and get their temperatures up. But yeah, I must admit I left a little bit earlier than I planned because I actually couldn't feel my fingers. Um, and yeah, but it was a really nice event and the atmosphere was really cool. And
yeah,
but they're doing it again this year in a different location.
yes.
So and in September, so it shouldn't be as cold. Um, do you know what you're going to talk about yet? Have you got any idea, or are you going to leave it till
Uh,
nearer to the
I
time?
probably, I'll probably leave it to nearer to the time,
Yeah,
but yeah, I've got sort of, I've got some stuff in the pipework, which obviously I can probably talk about, but it's not a secret. But what I mean is I'll be able to talk about it at the time because
yeah.
I'd have done it and had the information for it. I mean, I had no idea what I was going to talk about this time round. I'll be honest with you because I was watching everyone. I was thinking I'm just going to go up there and chat, and I was watching that inflatable screen they had, and people were prepped with videos,
Yeah.
and I think I mentioned, I was like, I had no idea this video was going to be going on, and I've come completely ill prepared. So I just talked about the equipment I use and the benefits and the negative side of it. So like it was oh, educational, perhaps. I don't know. I was probably telling people how to suck eggs because at the end of the day, a lot of the people there were paranormal investigators.
Mm,
So like, and it was, so I didn't want to insult anyone, but I was just chatting about the benefits as to why I use them, and it got a
mm.
good reception. So,
Yeah.
and some of the equipment I'm going to be buying down the line, etc. But yeah, it was fantastic. And then afterwards, which is a shame you didn't. I think you were, yeah, you left it because I think you were
Yeah.
saying like it's a shame because I want you wanted to go in to the priest's cottage with us. We started off doing an investigation in the hall
Yeah.
where we had the Paracon event after they'd all tidied up, and then we went
Right.
down into the cottage, and I was meant to stay in the cottage for that night.
Ugh.
um, but it wasn't the paranormal sort of side of it that kept me from staying there. It was the temperature. I think we
Well,
got
that's
to
why I went.
minus
Ugh. Yeah.
yeah, -7, and it was just.
Yeah.
I don't understand. And I bought this sleeping bag from Decathlon, and it was a thin bag. It says, "Oh yeah, it's good for up to temperatures of zero." Like, and I thought that'll do. And then I saw the temperature on the phone. I was like, "There's no way I'm
No,
sleeping in this house
it wouldn't.
tonight."
It wouldn't have been. I must admit, I don't get unnerved by venues. I did go into the cottage a few times. I did an interview for someone in there, and I did a show round. I felt fine on the ground level, but when we went up to where the landing is,
Yeah,
I ended up having to push myself against the wall because something was trying to push me over the banister. I could feel something moving me forwards and in my ear saying jump, jump, jump. And I was like, I don't like it. So I ended up like having my back against the wall, so I didn't go near the edge because I thought something is trying to get me to jump. That was, and when I told the guys from FX what had happened, they went, "Yeah, you're not the first." And one of
yeah,
the women there, similar age to me, a friend of mine from Haunted Happenings, she had exactly the same experience, and I hadn't told her about mine. That she said
yeah.
she felt like someone was trying to get her to jump over the banister.
Yeah, so that'd be that John the teacher. I think
Right.
he was a more sinister one there. The one that done, the crimes against the children in there, and there's a lot of. I don't know if you've recently sort of seen they've. I think it was her name was Jasmine from Bad Cat Paranormal. She's a bit like yourself. She likes the history of things, and she dug
Mm,
a bit deeper, and she discovered that there was this person, John, who was well, basically I think he either molested the children and then murdered them, and his only punishment was that he had to pay for the funeral and the funeral costs.
mm.
So whether or not so whether or not you can do your magic and sort of dive into that a bit deeper, that'd be amazing to find out. But I don't know where she got that information
I
from.
don't because I did do a look into that and I couldn't find anything that mentioned a court
Yeah,
case.
I
I I
I
I,
will.
I looked myself because I'd heard that was
Yeah,
one of the stories about
yeah,
the place because they say it was a school, but it was a Sunday. I think it was a Sunday school, not like a full blown national school or
yeah.
Lancastrian school or even sort of corporation school. So no, I and yeah, it would have been documented if someone was tried for that, and I couldn't find anything. So
Yeah.
it'd be
Well,
interesting to know what she found.
yeah, that's what I mean. I reckon for me, I was just like, well, maybe they kept it quiet because it was obviously something to do with the church as well. Like, they didn't want it to
Possibly.
be. But I mean, I didn't dive into it. I just
Mm,
basically said, oh, that's really, fascinating history. And I did ask like FX Panel where it was found, and they said, "Oh, this was from Jasmine's Bad Cat Paranormal." So,
mm,
yeah. I'll send her a message and find out like just
mm.
exactly where she found it from because that'd be really interesting. Because some of these places, though, the history is buried so deep,
It is.
that
It is, and you
especially when it
do,
comes to those kind of things.
and it's a full-time job trying to find it sometimes. That's why I can't always dig as deep as I would like unless it's for a project I'm working on.
Yeah.
But I did do some digging on the place we're going to talk about,
Oh yeah, Kenton Theatre. Yep,
Kenton
yep. We'll go
Theatre.
back to
Now,
that.
first things first, why did you decide to do these investigations solo? Because somebody's got to carry the equipment, and you said to me off air you're a nightmare for breaking equipment. So surely if you had someone with you who's a little bit more careful, you wouldn't have to replace it so much.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm terrible. So I've been doing it now since I was a teenager. We
Hmm.
started out as just a fun thing to do. Used to jump in my friends' cars, and we went to like at the time we had like some abandoned hospitals around us in
Mm.
Sonning Common, and then we used to start there, and then we got wind of there's a tunnel, a public tunnel, but it's on a private right of way in what you call an SAS institution. I think it's a place training facilities.
Hmm.
So during the day, the public had right of way there, and at night time, the whole grounds were locked up, and people were saying like, "Oh, I've seen a grey lady down the tunnel."
Mm.
Obviously, like that grey lady tunnel is a myth of everywhere. The grey
Mm.
lady's a myth of everywhere. And we used to we used to climb the gate and sneak in during the night time and go there. And it was all great. We'd done some there was a mansion behind quite a famous flower garden centre in Henley, so we managed to get into there a few times, but then obviously I think it was moved into by a settlement, um, and then we just found places, but then over the years obviously like I kind of veered off from doing it as a laugh thing, and I started attending proper organized paranormal events.
Hmm.
Um, and then one day I just said, you know what would be cool is if I'd like to go out and do it on my own because then the reason why I do it on my own, more or less 90% on my own, is because of some of the programs I've watched on TV where you know for a fact they have made for TV moments with
Hmm.
somebody behind the camera making a noise, throwing a fork past the camera, all that kind of stuff. Um,
Yeah.
and I just thought, like, paranormal is real, and I can understand why they've had to create made for TV moments because a lot of money's been pumped into these
Mm.
kind of programs and they need to draw the audience in. But I just wanted to go. I thought to myself, if I go there on my own, I'm going to eliminate the contamination from somebody else.
Hmm.
Like, moving, like, sometimes you don't realize you've moved a foot on, like, especially some of the old floors that creak and
Yeah.
things like that. And if you've got two people or three people or four people like asking questions every 5 to 10 seconds, you may miss something paranormal.
Mm.
You've asked them to speak with a voice, and then somebody else may like speak, and you might not hear anything. And it's also like and that was where I started. Then I thought, well, let's go down the route of like I want to do POV. So I want to make it about like it's not like turning the camera to myself all the time,
Mm.
like all that. I wanted to put you in the investigation
Yeah.
where all you're seeing is me walking around holding the lantern, which it just is it a gimmicky thing? I don't know. It's just like it just adds a bit of ambiance to the whole thing.
Mm.
So you've got your eerie POV with a lantern light in front of you, and then you walk. I walk around. I still call out. I still use equipment, but I'm putting you in the actual I'm making you feel like it's you that's there.
Yeah.
That was my aim, so that's why I started doing it by myself. And the fact is it just adds eeriness because people just think I'm nuts going to some of the most haunted locations up and down the country,
It's not actually going into the locations on my own that would bother me. I'm not scared of the dead, it's the living. So as a woman, if I knew I was in a building on my own
yeah,
and I had nobody like outside keeping an eye on me and checking nobody's gonna, because I've been into like I've done proper ghost hunts before where members of the public have tried to push their way in because they've heard
yeah.
noise and so they've decided. And as a woman, that's scary. The ghosts can do whatever they want because they don't scare me as much. Um, so yeah, I do. It does add that, like you say, the added ambiance of the fact you're on your own. Something could happen. You've got no one there to sort of say, "No, you're imagining it," or whatever. But um, it is an interesting concept, and obviously people can see you put snapshots of your videos on your TikTok account, the Paranormal Viking, and then you've got your YouTube account as well, where you can watch
Yeah,
the full videos.
yeah,
Um, what I found so fascinating about Kenton Theatre on New Street in Henley, that anyone who knows me will know why this appealed to me, is it's the site itself's background. So originally, the land was left to Robert Kenton in 1503, I believe, by his friend. Um, he then, Kenton then basically his son erected, I think it was his son or his grandson possibly, erected some cottages, 5 cottages on it. They were then left to the Corporation of Henley in the mid 17, well, 1632, so 17th century, and the corporation turned them into poorhouses. So
yeah.
the early stage workhouse, not the workhouse that everyone thinks of, like the Oliver Twist. Don't even get me started on that because that's a load of crap anyway. But it,
Mm.
the Victorian workhouse, even though technically it was before the Victorian era. But again, don't get me started on that. Um, the hairs will be split if I kept going on that one. But so they were basically what they call parish workhouses. So they were like almshouses for the poor, and those cottages stayed as workhouses until around 1788 when the Corporation of Henley said we need something better than this, and they I think it was 1790 they opened a different style of workhouse in Henley that actually did become the poor law workhouse subsequently. So you've got this place, and there's a reason I'm stressing this place would not have been somewhere people who were, shall we say, alive during its incarnation as the poorhouse would have wanted to go to, because going to the poorhouse was not seen as just accepting help. It was seen as being a bit of a stigma. There's a reason I'm stressing that. Um, it then got redeveloped into an actual theatre. They rebuilt it. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. They rebuilt it into a theatre, I think in about 1805. That actually then closed in 1813 because nobody came, basically. And then in 1817, it was changed into what was known as a national school. What do you do,
Right.
do you know much about the national school movement?
No. Other than obviously, I heard you talk about the national school movement, a part of your history speech when
Yeah.
we done the up in the Paracon. But other than that, no, I don't. To be
Okay.
honest with you.
So in the 19th century, it cost money to get an education. There was no mandatory or free education. So what it actually meant is a lot of poorer families and less well-off families couldn't afford to send their children to school because they needed them to work. They needed them to work to bring in the extra money. But what the sort of some of the pioneers, people like Joseph Lancaster, who started the Lancasterian schools, which I talk about in my book Paranormal Playtime, and Dr. Andrew Bell, who actually started the national school movement. What they were coming out with, there was also the ragged schools, was another type, was either very, very cheap or heavily supplemented education for the poor. Because their theory was if we can teach these kids to read and write, we're going to get them off that cycle of being poor and needing to go, you know, ask for help and everything else. If we can teach them to read and write, they can get a better job. And therefore, we're going to break that poverty cycle. That's actually one of the reasons that a lot of people don't realize this, but in the Poor Law Act after 1834, that was actually one of the things that was stipulated. If you were in the workhouse and you were between a certain age, you had to have 3 hours of education every day to get you out of that trap of being poor, because the amount of people who were illiterate back then was very, very high. Because unless you had a parent who couldn't read or write or an older sibling, there was no one to teach you, because if they couldn't do it, they couldn't afford to send you to school. So these kind of poor schools were devised, but the main difference with the national schools versus the Lancasterian, they were around the same time, and Bell and Lancaster were arch rivals. Um, the Lancaster schools, the Lancasterian schools, were non-denominational. The national schools were always attached to a church, and they were basically designed for sort of promoting the learning of religion and everything else. And they would use a lot of religious text as one of the ways they would teach, which is when you find, if you look around, you might see a school that says it was a VA or Church of England primary school. They probably had their roots as being national schools back in the 19th century. So
Right.
I'm probably boring you to tears, to be quite honest, but
Well, no, because not really at all. Because I mean, my school had it was Roman Catholic, and I
yeah,
always wanted to know what the difference between Roman Catholics and VAs was, and all that kind of church
VA was
school
Church
of
of England. Yeah, VA would have
yeah,
been Church of England. So voluntary
and now
aided
I
is what it
know.
stands for.
Yeah,
So
but we was always told RC because my school RC stood for Rough Club because it was just nothing but fights in the
oh
playground.
no, I mean, ironically, I was baptized as Roman Catholic, but the best school in my area was a Church of England VA school. But yeah, back before taxes started going towards paying for education, sort of in the later 19th century, these were all voluntary aided, charitable schools, for want of a better term. So they were set up with donations from wealthy people, and obviously the church is pretty darned wealthy, and so the church would be subsidizing these schools, and then they'd be doing sort of fundraising to raise more money to keep them running. So that's the difference really between a national school and a Lancasterian. And also, like I say, if you see a school that says VA or Church of England Primary, the chances are that's had its roots. I can normally tell by just seeing the building designs what they were. It would have had its roots. And the thing is, with these classrooms, they wouldn't have had sort of individual classrooms for like year one, year two, year three, or whatever. They would have all been in one big classroom so that you didn't have to pay for as many teachers, which would have been the biggest expense for
Yeah,
schooling. It was teachers and paper, really. And so they would have them all in one sort of big large, which is where you see the photos of the big large classrooms from like the early sort of 20th century. and so this place it opened in 1817 as a national school. In 1830 it was enlarged. That's my dog. 1830 it was enlarged to cater for infants. So been another, possibly a second classroom would have been added for the younger children. Um, but then in 1849 it moved to another location at Gravel Hill. So it would not be a surprise to hear children's spirits there if it's anything like the British school in Hitchin that I've investigated, which was a Lancasterian school.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that one as well, didn't you? The Paragon. I
I
remember
would have done, yeah.
you were saying about like the seeing the silhouette against a window, a door window, was it?
Yeah, it wasn't
Or is
me
it?
that caught that. It was somebody else. But yeah, that
Yeah,
they I mean, I did hear one of the things I experienced when I was at Hitchin was I heard a child laughing, like proper on laughing, and it was
yeah,
about 12:30 at night, and it couldn't have been from any of the. It wasn't. You couldn't hear it outside the classroom. You only heard it in the
in the
classroom.
classroom.
Yeah, and also, I mean, another one I did. I was in the corridor that would have been where the girls, because the girls and boys were segregated, and I like coming up with triggers. I like trigger experiments. That's my favorite thing to think of. And so I
Yeah,
played the sound of a school bell going,
yeah.
and literally seconds after I played that, along the wooden floor, I heard noise, and it was only me in the building, and I was sat on the floor. So I
Oh,
think that's. I know you've mentioned before a child spirit being captured
yeah.
at the theatre.
And what you've done there is kind of helped me kind of piece the puzzle because I was unsure as to where the child spirit would fit. Obviously, the theatre would be a great place for children to go because it's a
Yeah,
sort of entertainment, and maybe like I thought, maybe just if it was a child spirit, they just wanted to go back there for nostalgia. But what you've done there is just unearth something that I wasn't exactly sort of I wasn't really, I hadn't dug into that much history of the Kenton Theatre other than what I knew about like the Mary Blandy kind of murder sort of stuff.
uh-huh.
Um, and then I thought, well, where would this child fit in? And you've literally just pretty much put another piece in the puzzle that makes sense. That it used to be
It was a school.
it was a school. Back we say early 1800s, didn't you say?
1817 till 1849.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to go back there. Well, I'm going back there in March, and I'm going to do, if you, with your permission, I'm going to do the trigger sort of experiment that you've done with the school bell. I'm not too sure if they already used a school bell back then, like even the hand ones, like the hand when I was at primary school, they had a handheld one to ring to
Yeah,
get you all back into your line. But I'll give it a go, see what I can come up with.
you never know.
That'd be interesting. Yeah,
You
that would be
never know.
interesting.
Well, I mean, you mentioned Mary Blandy. And now, I mean, obviously this building went, it didn't become a theatre again until 1892. Before then, it was actually a dissenters' chapel, and dissenters were people who didn't want to follow the basic Protestant. They had a different sort of idea what Protestantism meant. Then it was a wash house. I mean, this place is, tell you, the incarnations of this place. It's mind blowing, to be quite honest. It was the hall for the St Mary's Church next door, but one of the ghost stories, and I do have a bit of an issue with this. I will be honest, and I'm probably going to get people from Henley saying you're never welcome here again. Um, the whole Mary Blandy. Now, for anyone who's not heard of Mary Blandy, she was a woman who was hanged in April 1752, according to the records at Oxford Castle, for murdering her father. Sounds pretty cut and dry. She poisoned him, supposedly.
Yeah.
Now, when you start digging into the case, you actually feel a bit sorry for her because she was in her early 30s and she'd fallen in love with a soldier called Captain William Henry Cranstoun, however it's pronounced. And, you know, her father was like, oh, good, because to be honest, 30 and not married in the 18th century, you would have been it wouldn't have been expected you were going to get married because you would have expected to have been married 10 years before that. But she's met someone and he's told her he loves her, and he's you know treated her, so I hope, well. Then she finds out that he's actually already married to a woman up in Scotland. And her father doesn't like this, but she's madly in love with him. She can see nothing wrong. He doesn't love her. It wasn't a real marriage. Well, the woman's had kids with him, so there must have been some kind of marital stuff going on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and the father says forbids her from marrying him because he reckons he's annulling the marriage. It was never, I mean, how you can annul a marriage that's quite obviously been consummated, I'm not quite sure. But he's basically telling her that, I'm there for you, I will marry you. And supposedly they did get married before she she committed murder. But he gave her, supposedly gave her a potion that was going to make her father realize that he should be allowed to be with his daughter. That's what she said. She said she thought it was like a love potion that, well, maybe he didn't give her the potion, but he told her someone who could give her this love potion that would make her father see they were madly in love and stop blocking the relationship. Um, she gave her father this potion. Well, it was arsenic. And we kind of all know what happens when you consume arsenic. It's not good. And he died. She was found guilty of murder, even though she kept saying, but I just thought it was a love potion. I don't think she had the intelligence to actually kill him, if I'm completely honest with you. And she was hanged for murder, understandably. Now, this is where I find it a bit odd. She was actually buried. So this must have happened before the Murder Act of 1752 came into place, because people who'd committed murder and been hanged were not allowed to be buried in consecrated ground. She's buried between her parents in St Mary's Church.
Right, okay.
And somehow that has led people to believe that the young female ghost that's seen at the theatre has got to be Mary Blandy, because who else could it be? Now, firstly, early 30s in the 18th century is not a young woman. It isn't, it just isn't. And also, of all the places, why would she haunt somewhere that had been a workhouse during her time? That she would have stayed away from that. If she had been brought up the way it looks like she was,
Yeah.
why would she go to somewhere that had been a workhouse? Now, what's even more interesting in this story is Cranston, he actually died 8 months later in Flanders of a mystery illness. I think that's quite poetic justice, because to me, everyone knows that one of my things is I call someone an arsehole when I do talks. He's the arsehole of the piece.
Yeah.
He's the slandering con man arsehole of this piece. He wasn't even a
So,
particularly good soldier by all accounts.
so are you saying that he may have deliberately set her up, not knowing that she was going to get caught, or
Yes, I
no?
am.
Well,
Yes, I
that's
am.
interesting. That is
I
interesting.
he she supposedly, according to the reports, he told her, this person who could sell her a love potion, to make her father believe that they were truly in love and to leave them free to be together. That's what the account said.
In a nutshell, what he's saying was, I can give you a potion that will be able to sort of get rid of your father, but he worded it in another way.
Hmm. That's how I
Well,
would interpret it. Now, he
yeah.
was the fact that did have a wife and children in Scotland. Mary was a little bit younger than him, about 8 or 9 years younger, they believe. I think he was having his cake and eating it. And he kept telling, there's just too much in it that he's innocent. He is an arsehole. He is, I don't believe, having read some of the transcripts of like statements she made, she wasn't intelligent enough to commit murder. She
Mm.
wasn't. She wasn't. And which is and like I say, people of Henley are probably going to come down on me like a ton of bricks for saying this, and there's probably people who studied our case a lot more longer than I have saying, actually, no, you're wrong. I might be, but from what I've read and the fact she still kept saying she didn't know it was poison right until the end. um I think he coerced her. I
Do you know what would be interesting though is you're saying that sort of he was married in Scotland, and he would have obviously been away from home quite a lot.
mm,
what would be interesting is to find out where else he would have stayed and if there are any other hangings of women that where fathers or brothers or uncles were killed, died in
Wouldn't it
mysterious
just?
circumstances.
Wouldn't it just? It would be, it wouldn't surprise me if he had more women on the go. Um,
Yeah,
he just, he did not have a good reputation. And like I say, even he wasn't even a particularly good soldier by all accounts.
no,
Um,
okay,
one of the accounts said he was short, fat, and quite repugnant.
yeah, he still managed to get the women by the sounds of it.
Still managed, but like I say, in 1750, if you were 30, 31 and unmarried, you would accept whatever attention you got
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
you would have been seen as a spinster in a very negative way if you were still. I mean, hell's bells. I got it when I was 30 and unmarried. I got asked if there was something wrong with me and why was I not married with children at 30? And that would have been in the early 2000s. So 300 years previously, when all a woman was supposed to be for was to have children and keep a house, she probably thought she probably thought her night was never going to come and was quite prepared to accept someone who 10 years previously she might have said, nah, I can do better than you. But
yeah,
otherwise, she had
yeah.
a life of just looking after her father until he died.
Well, yeah,
I think if Cranston was a manipulative, shall we say, narcissist, he would have known
yeah,
who it would work on. He would have known, and I
yeah.
just think he coerced and manipulated her. But
So he probably sort of he probably done his due diligence and found out about her maybe a couple of months prior to
possibly
this, and thought this is where I can make some money here. And
he was short, fat, and repugnant.
well,
Um,
he was successful in one side, wasn't he? So
well,
yeah,
I think it's poetic justice that he did die 8 months later.
yeah, yeah, and hopefully it wasn't a nice. But I
It was
don't
an
think it's fair
illness.
on
It
him.
was a mystery illness. That's all.
A
That's all.
mystery
But
illness.
it was in Flanders, in
Yeah,
Belgium, that he died. So that's as far as I dug on him because he made my skin crawl, really. But
yeah.
I just don't believe reading some of the stuff that was written about her that I don't I don't I mean she killed
You
some
don't
she
think it's Mary?
I think it's Mary at the theatre. No.
Yeah, you
No,
don't?
gut feeling, no, because my thing would be why? What would bring her to the theatre? There
Because
must be
when
so
she
many
was
other
alive, it was a
places in
workhouse.
Henley. There must have been
Yeah.
so many places in Henley that she could have gone to. Why somewhere that in her time would have been a workhouse?
You know that yeah, because I was struggling to obviously I like I said I read up on a little bit of history, but
Mm,
not as in depth as you have. I don't have the know all the knowledge or the contacts to really dig deep into it.
mm.
But even I struggled to be like what I needed
Why?
to put the things. Why would she be there? Because I know obviously like there were I think there was some sort of connection, but not to the theatre when she was alive.
Yeah, the only connection I can find is that the theatre was used as the church hall for St Mary's Church at one point, the building that the
Yeah,
theatre's in. That is the only connection I could find. But if I go back to knowing the stigma that was attached to the workhouses and the poorhouses and everything else,
you wouldn't
why?
want to go back there. Yeah.
No, no. Also, the other thing is the descriptions of her is as a young female, a young woman is seen. She would not have been classed as young in her 30s.
No, no,
That would have
back in
been
then,
that
yeah.
was middle-aged back then.
That's more than middle age. I think that was like almost like
Possibly. I mean, it's 60 wouldn't have been unusual if you had a reasonably healthy life.
yeah,
50 to 60 would not have been unusual if you'd had a reasonably healthy life. And she'd never had children, which was actually one of the reasons that a lot of women died early. It was
yeah.
in childbirth. But you see, what it got me thinking was, is there a woman associated with the area that might want to be seen at the theatre?
Right.
And I found one.
Oh, this is interesting. Yeah, go for it.
Go on. So In May of 1929, Claire Gertrude Bowyer died at the age of 18. She'd lived on, is it Church Lane, Church Road, something like that?
Yeah,
But
Church Road, I think it was. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, Church Road. Yeah.
but she died from a sudden mysterious illness at the age of 19, so very sad. Her parents had said she was well known in Henley as an accomplished singer, dancer, and musician. Now,
Right.
I can't find that she ever appeared at the theatre because it was a theatre in 1929. Obviously, it reopened as a theatre in 1892. So it would have been a place where performances would have taken place. And if she was known in Henley as being a singer, a dancer, and a musician, is there a chance she could have appeared at the theatre and that's where her happy place was?
I I don't know what to say to that. That is something new. That I'm
And
just
she
trying
was
to piece this all
19,
together.
so she was a
And she was
young
19.
woman.
So all the things that potential that is just I'm right. Okay, let me just get my head around this for a second, Penny, because you might have just thrown a cat amongst the pigeons
Oh,
here
I love
because
doing that. I love doing
I
that with people. That's why people hate me.
I can't because you literally I kind of now had to remove Mary from the equation
Mm,
because of what you've just said, and potentially when I go there next in March, I may have to come to the conclusion that it wasn't Mary. It was
Claire.
what was her name again? Sorry,
Claire Gertrude Bowyer.
Claire Barrier.
Mm.
I honestly don't know what to say to that. That's thrown me off. Yeah. Okay. Right. So let's remove Mary from the equation for a
I mean,
second
it may be
because you
Mary.
potentially
Nobody knows. But to me, I can't see the logic. And one of the things
we
I do have a bit of an issue with is everyone always assumes the ghost that's being seen is a famous person. I mean,
yeah.
how many places does Anne Boleyn supposedly haunt?
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean,
Every place you've been.
it's possible it could all be Anne,
Yeah.
but it's also possible one of them could be one of her ladies in waiting because they would have been dressed very similar. You know,
Yeah.
it's always people always assume it's the famous name because then that's like, oh, so and so haunted by such and such a person. Well, it might not be them. It might be someone relatively unknown who, I mean, how would you, right, if I was Claire, if it is Claire, right, and everyone thinks my ghost is that of someone who killed their father, I'd be like, look, for heaven's sake, I can kill anyone. It's me. I'm a singer. I'm a dancer. I'm a musician. You know, I'd be getting pretty annoyed if I was an intelligent spirit and everyone's thinking I'm somebody who killed my father 200 years previously.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God, Claire. Oh, what have you done for me, Penny? Because I was all set to go back in March with I had everything. I had like sort of I always I go blind into
Yeah.
certain investigations, but I do structure them in a way that,
Hmm.
if I veer off, I can come back to something. You've now just taken my structure, like a piece of paper, screwed it up, and thrown it out the window and said, "There you go, Chris. Now you've got some more information."
You're
That,
welcome.
oh no. So right. Okay, so I'm going back in March
Hmm.
to the Kenton Theatre.
Hmm.
I won't say anything to the theatre manager um, because obviously they have created the persona and history of that theatre around the paranormal side of it, around the Mary.
Yeah, they're never going to let me
Um,
come in, are they?
but I'm going to have, yeah, and the child as well. So you were saying that so the child would have been the child
Could have
spirit they've
been.
seen would have been, yeah, something from possibly the school, relating to the school when it was a
That would make
school.
more logic to me than a child going to a theatre, because especially a
Yeah,
small theatre as well. I mean,
it's
I,
it is a very small theatre,
I
but
don't
it's
know
it's
socially how many children would have gone to the theatres in the 19th
back in them
century.
days, it would have been too expensive unless somebody
Mm,
funded, like, So I'm going to have to go back now. I'm going to have to rethink. So I'm going to go back with the idea that's potentially a child spirit connected to the when it was a school,
mhm.
and then this new Claire spirit that instead of being Mary, it might be Claire, who is basically sort of saying, "Look, I'm still here. I still want to perform."
Yeah.
And that's potentially why I wasn't getting much response when I was calling out for Mary. I was
Mhm.
getting responses, but it was more kind of on the loop responses.
Mm.
It was more kind of like what you call it. You've got your intelligent spirits, and then you have your
Yeah.
residual,
Residual.
residual.
Yeah.
So, oh God, tell you
Well,
that
if you
thing.
wanted to do what I would do if I was going back in as a trigger, I would find some music that was commonly played in, say, 1928, 1929, and I'd play it.
Yeah,
Also, for the school, I'd go in with the blackboard and start writing A, B, C and ask them to
and ask,
repeat it after me.
yeah, and but act quite strict because I would imagine their teachers would have been quite strict then.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. No, but that's what I would do as a trigger. So find some music that would have been common in the 1920s and just
yeah.
play it. Just play it and see if
Well,
I mean,
I'm not going.
I've had some really good stuff from playing music that was synonymous with the era that the place is meant to have been.
Yeah, well, I'm not going down alone on this, Penny. I am. If it turns out that I get more responses, your name is like. And by the way, and I'll even tag you in it so they can come back to you and say, "Do you know how much history you've just unravelled?"
Well, the thing is,
But
Mary Blandy's case, I mean, in all honesty, like joking aside, her
yeah,
case is an interesting one. I'd not heard of it until I started researching it for this. And most of the researchers I've read up agree with what I've said is that she didn't seem intelligent enough. There was another factor at play here. I do think she was coerced by the captain. I think he was incredibly he wanted to control her. I don't
yeah,
think I don't think she had gave her father poison to get rid of her father. I think she thought she was influencing his decision. So her story is still fundamental to Henley. It is still
yeah,
an incredibly important story. I just don't get, just because it's near to the church and had links with the church in the 19th century when it, well, yeah, the 19th, yeah, 19th century, when it was a kind of the church hall. I just don't get why she'd want to be there. I don't, she would never have attended it when it was a theatre. So because she was born after yeah, she would have been born. She was dead. She died before it became a theatre in 18 whenever it was 1805. So
yeah,
she would never have experienced it as a theatre. And the only reason she'd be there is if she was like a floating around ghost and heard laughter and stuff on top, or like the energy, and decided to latch onto it there. I mean, obviously we don't know, but to me, it's tenuous. And
yeah,
I think it's just, do we know any famous women from? Oh, yeah, Mary Blandy was from here. Well, maybe it's her then, and it takes on a life of its own. But I think,
yeah.
yeah, like I say, the theatre will probably absolutely hate me, and I'll be banned from ever entering the gates of Henley.
Nonsense. You
But
know what? They'll probably. Do you know what? They would probably. They'd be more interested because obviously, like they. I know places like once a rumor and is part of
mm,
history, they don't want to tamper with it too much.
yeah,
But sometimes there's the thing, they'd have damage control. Oh God, actually, we've looked into this, and this might be the case.
mm,
Like, and they might potentially they might bring in. So look, come in. We'll sell tickets, and you can talk about the history of the place, what you think, what your take of it is, and then people will walk out absolutely bewildered because, like, some of their families, like in Henley, have been there for hundreds of years, and to them, it's part of their history of like, oh yeah,
yeah,
this is where Mary Blandon was, and they'll probably come away going. What do we do now type thing, but in a positive way,
yeah.
because then they can look into the history of Claire, who deserves to be heard, I think,
Well, she's
by the
probably,
sounds
I
of it.
mean, the fact she only died in 1929, there is a very strong chance those descendants still
That's
alive.
where I've heard the name. I know, because I grew up in Caversham Park Village,
Right.
and our hangout places was Henley, and that surname stands out quite well to me.
Mm.
And I might have to sort of pick up an old Yellow Pages book and now go through, go, Oh yeah, because all the yellow pages would have had like addresses in and things like that.
Yeah.
Might even be online, but I'm going to have to look into that. I'm just, and I'm going to have to rethink my investigation now in March. I'm
Well,
going to have
it's
to come
always
at it a
good,
new
good,
angle.
yeah. And like I said, it might be Mary. I might be
Yeah,
completely and utterly wrong.
I
I just can't. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, I suppose hauntings don't really make sense, and it's just the way my brain works that I want things to make sense. But it makes more
yeah
sense to me that someone who, in her basically her obit, was said to have been an accomplished singer, musician, and dancer in the town
yeah.
was more likely to still be there than someone who had absolutely no connection to the theatre whatsoever.
The only thing I can think of is we talk about trigger objects, right?
Mm,
The only thing I can think, or objects that have where they get like attachments to.
mm.
You're gonna probably laugh at me for this, but I've just had this image in my head. Like, there's a lot of back in the day, there have been a lot of ropes and pulleys
Yeah,
for like opening the
you're
curtains
thinking
up
of
and
the
whatnot.
rope that hanged her. Mm.
Yes.
So, I mean, hey, nothing is out of the realms of possibility, but if it's the rope that hanged me, I'd probably avoid it. I mean, yeah, the
Yeah.
only thing is someone might have believed it was her so much she has almost responded to the call, sort of thing.
But yeah,
But
they say you can manifest that spirit,
yeah,
can't they? Yeah,
yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
I do. I had this conversation with someone else recently that I think if enough people focus on it, yeah, it's almost like a hive mind thing.
yeah.
But I think it's always worth questioning a sort of uh almost like the story has always been this. Well, how do you know? Has she ever come through and spelled her name as Mary? You know, has she ever shown you her being hanged outside? You know, is it because a psychic picked it up once that they assume that's the case? And so could
Yeah.
the psychic have got their signs slightly, skew with and thought who's the one we know? Well, it's got to have been Mary Blandy. Um, I
I,
just I'd be
but there's
interested to
only
know
one with.
where the haunting came from, when did someone say it's Mary Blandy? Or is it,
Yeah.
well, we assume it is because she's the woman who's most well known.
Well, yeah, because obviously, like when they first like you obviously when somebody first saw it, as you say, it's like how it's not saying they forced the rumor, but they're like, well,
Mm.
who do we know that was famously who do we know that it was died that was famous for specific reasons, like
Yeah.
where they and then all of a sudden, like it's, oh, well, what about that one that was hung that lived just down the road, but was hung at Oxford, and maybe that's like I say that just it just
It
gathered its own
gathers
momentum.
momentum. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well,
whereas I
I'm
think if
gonna.
Claire was robbed of her life, albeit not in a violent way, but she was her life ended sooner than people would have expected. And
Yeah.
she thought she was going to have a life on stage.
And how did Claire die? Did you
Mysterious illness. Again,
a
sudden
mysterious
illness.
illness?
I haven't gone as far as to pull up death certificates for her and everything
Yeah.
else, but yeah, just the article just said sudden illness.
Yeah. 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 Well, I'm good. Right. So I'm going back in March. Um, and I'm going to do almost like a split investigation. I'm
Mm.
not going to be just going down at one angle. Now that you've said that, I feel compelled to go in with the knowledge that potentially it's not Mary. It's this potentially it could
Claire,
be this other Claire, this Bow
Bowyer,
Bowyer
Bowyer.
Bowyer. Yeah, I was going to say Bowyer. Um, I'm going to go down that route, and then I'm also going to go down the route of with the child not being like not being a residual or even intelligent haunting because it's a place of entertainment. It could be a place of education, and maybe they died, like they could have died whilst attending that
Possibly because
school, not in
child
there.
mortality obviously was high. I mean, this is one of the things I get though when I talk about the British School Museum in Hitchin, when people say, "Oh, the child must have been murdered there to haunt it." No, if you had a child who at home was one of 8, 9, 10 children, wouldn't get much attention. No disrespect to the parents, but when you've got that many children that you're trying to look after, it's hard. Whereas when they're at school, they're achieving something. They
Yeah,
might be, yes, all right, they might be getting disciplined a lot, but they also might be getting told well done because they learned how to write their ABC or whatever. Or at playtime when they'd go out. and be able to play with a ball and a hoop and stick and all that kind of stuff that they may not have access to at home. it,
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
it
yeah.
might have been a place that they felt happy, they felt comfortable, and I think it's getting away from the assumption that ghosts have to have had a bad experience at a place to want to go back there. It could be the exact opposite. It could be that they had such a good time there. That's where they want to spend
Yeah, yeah,
their
yeah, yeah, yeah.
memories. Um,
Yeah, the memories that, obviously at the time of like the time of passing, it's just like
mm,
almost like they say, like on the time passing, your life flashes before your eyes, and it's
yeah,
almost like they've given that opportunity to like, well, like where do you want to be? And they grab that opportunity because like that's where my fun time was.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm good. Well, I'm good. That's exactly how I'm going to structure my investigation, and I will 100% tag you in that,
Thank you.
so that all the historians of Henley can come
And
as
hate on me. Yeah.
yeah,
What
pitchfork
does
and
she know? She spent an hour looking into this and she thinks she knows it all. Yeah. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
can come after as a mob, old style witch mob type thing, like burn her.
Yeah. Well, probably would. I mean, I don't mind it when people say to me, "You're wrong," if they tell me why I'm wrong. I said, I
Yeah,
have
yeah,
no problem with them saying you missed this. Okay, great, thank you. But I just don't get it. I don't get it with Mary. I and having studied schools a lot when I did paranormal playtime, like you said, the talk I last did at Spook and Spirit Fest was on Victorian schools. There were kids who enjoy it wasn't seen as a punishment to go to school like kids do now. It was actually seen as, something quite exciting. And
yeah,
yes, there was corporal punishment, although interesting in the Lancasterian schools it was banned because they were Quaker based. But it would still have been something very different to what they were used to at home. And
it was
and
it was a hope, wasn't it? It was a form of hope for them. Like
yeah,
I'm going to get my education and not
yeah.
have to go work in the usual
I
kind of
mean,
wash
bear in
house industry.
mind, in that time that school was open, I mean, obviously not in Henley, you didn't have mining like coal pits and cotton mills and stuff. But whilst that when that during that time, kids were still working from 5, 6 years old. They
Yeah,
would still be expected to do 12, 13, 14-hour days at work. So
that's just crazy, isn't it?
it is. I mean, when things like the accidents start changing until the 1830s, 1840s on working hours for children and what children were able to do. I mean, up until the 1830s, kids of 5 and 6 were still going down the mines for
Yeah,
12, 13
yeah, yeah,
hours a day. So if you think the choice was either, I know say you didn't have mines in Henley, but whatever the trade was, you're either 5, 6 years old working yourself to the bone or getting to go to school. I think
yeah.
most would have chosen going to school, even though it would have been,
Haven't Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, having that kind of that equal time with children of their own. Well, not all children
hmm,
of their age. As you said earlier on, it'll be a mixed class of ages, but it'll be a fun kind of environment,
yeah,
learning and
yeah.
and yeah, yeah. I think as a child back then, I think I'd know where I'd rather be.
Well, exactly. But it's because so many people now, because school is mandatory, people don't realize how exciting it would have been to have been able
Yeah,
to be able to learn to write your own name. I mean, that was another, I can't remember if I said this in the talk, the statistic that at the beginning of Queen Victoria's reign, the percentage, I can't remember the exact statistic, but it was only like 20% of people could sign their own name or something ridiculous at the beginning of her reign. But at the end
yeah,
of it, that was over 90%. And the way they measured this was they looked at I might have got those statistics wrong, so don't come at me, but it was that bigger. It was a massive jump, and it was because of schooling being brought in as almost mandatory from sort of 1870 onwards. But
yeah,
also they took wedding certificates and how many people just put an X by their name compared to how many actually were able to sign their name. And that's how they measured people had learned to write because they could actually sign their own name on their marriage certificate, which I
yeah.
think is quite an interesting way of measuring it. But when that sort of, and there are cases of children I researched when I researched my book Paranormal Playtime, who I looked into a few to see what happened to them once they learned to read and write. And one of them set up his own very successful. He went from being his family verging on being in the workhouse to having his own successful business, and I think he even bought his own house in the end. So just learning to read and write and learning how to add numbers made a massive difference.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and
absolutely. Because
I don't
that
think people appreciate that now with modern sort of
it's a given thing,
education.
isn't it? It's yeah,
Mm,
it's a given thing now. You know you're thrown into education from the age of 2, 3. Obviously, I know education at that age
mm,
is very kind of like it's more of a playtime education. But the minute you go through like preschool to infant school, primary school they call it now, yeah, it's expected,
mm.
isn't it?
But
So yeah, my God, yeah, oh yeah,
you didn't
that is
expect all of this, did you? When I
no,
asked you
because
to be.
but the thing is, this is what I thought. You've now given me a whole new take on which direction I should like approach paranormal investigations. Where sometimes I go in blind, I'll have maybe the odd name or two,
Mm,
and I'll react to if I have like I've told you about the hexacom that I keep breaking it, or I kept breaking every time I go, I break something. But I rely on something like that, and I don't rely on it as evidence, but I rely on it to to give me momentum during the
mm,
investigation. But every now and then you will get something quite sort of something that
yeah.
comes through and it is bang on the money and it gives you something to grab hold of and run with that. And then afterwards you can do your research and your history and think, what I come
Mm,
up with and seeing the history of it, these two are connected, or there was somebody that called that name, etc. So I'm now going to have to go to all not just the Kenton Theatre, but all my other investigations that have got some serious history to it, and go in with a bag full of kind of like information. And then if I come away with at least ticking half of that information away, then I know the stuff that I'm using is doing its job.
yeah.
Um,
My advice would be don't look for the obvious. When you're doing the
yeah,
history
yeah,
side, don't look for
yeah,
the obvious. Sometimes it is the obvious, but you can have it can be it's and always ask questions of it. Or always just because everyone else has always said it's a certain thing, ask questions. Put the cat amongst the pigeons because you never
yeah.
know what you're going to find.
Exactly. Yeah. Ask the in between questions that they wouldn't
Mm,
even look at asking. They're, like you say, they're asking the most obvious. Like if just
mm,
say, for example, say you watch a film, um, everyone is going to pinpoint a certain time in that film that everyone's going to talk about.
hmm.
They don't sort of talk about the other stuff, the quiet stuff, the subtle information that led to that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something. Yeah, I'm going to do that 100%. That's I'll definitely run with that. But I'm also going to have to find a way of not breaking any equipment.
Might be a good idea. It gets a bit expensive that way.
Oh, does it ever? So I mean, I give an example. This is how clumsy I am. In August, I had an operation.
Hmm.
I had a mesh repair. I basically torn a big hole in my stomach above my belly button.
Ooh,
I was off work for 6 months,
blimey.
running up to that operation. But after my operation, 3 weeks later, I'd done an abandoned church,
Hmm.
um, and I thought nothing of it. I was able to drive, etc. I thought it's just a church, blah blah blah. There's no harm in it. And it's in the middle of nowhere. I had no phone signal, no nothing like that. And I'm doing the investigation, and I put the camera behind me by the altar, facing down towards the thing, and that gave me light
Hmm.
because I was using the light off of that to walk around and do my thing. And I had my POV camera, my GoPro,
Hmm.
and I thought, well, I'm going to walk around with the night vision camera now. So I took that off the stand and I walked down the corridor, but I forgot about the 3 steps in front of me.
Oh.
And I've literally missed a step. I've gone down these steps, flying down these steps, head first into the poos, knocking these chairs over like dominoes, and breaking my camera. So basically, like I ended up breaking my night vision camera on that investigation. Thought I'd tore my stitches open again, but
I would have
thankfully
been
that
more
didn't
worried about
happen.
the mesh, to be quite honest, than my camera.
No, I was actually so it was one of those instances where somebody falls over the drink. They've done everything in their power to save the drink. I was
Right.
going down. There weren't steep steps. I'd probably say there was a good 3.5 foot sort of difference in the level. But it was the fact is I've gone at a certain angle that I'd done a Superman down these hit the head first into the poos. breaking my camera, and it was just I just thought this is typical. So, and prior to that, what else did I break prior to that? Um, I broke. Oh, it was one of those laser pen torches. You know, like you
Yeah.
hold them, and they
Yeah,
produce all the
yeah.
lasers on the wall, etc. I broke one of those. I put it in my back pocket, sat down, and it snaps.
Remind me
Things
not
like
to lend you anything of mine.
that. I
No
was,
disrespect, no harsh feelings, but I'll look
I
after
was
mine, thanks.
Oh dear. So now I bought these special cases, but it's having the special cases protects them whilst I'm going to the investigation,
Not while you're
traveling
using
to and
them.
from, but not while I'm using them. So, but I do. I actually put it up. So, if you know, if you go back into the history of my YouTube channel, it would have been September last year or September, October. I can't remember. I think it was late September, I think. And I made fun of it because I sort of, as I fell, I created I added this like huge tsunami wave sort of in the background of on this bridge because I'd fallen over, like, you know, something causing a tsunami somewhere. So I made fun of myself, but at the
Good.
time I realised how vulnerable I could be doing it on my own. It hasn't stopped me. It's just made me right. I need to think about certain things now. So like I had no signal. So if I'd have done some damage, I'd have been there on
Mm,
my own for God knows how long. Because even though the Friends of the Church look after this place, it's unlocked throughout the night. You
yeah.
put your donation in the thing. I don't know how often they come, and I don't know how often people go
Mm.
in there like during. So I now kind of like I've now bought my phone can hold two SIM cards, and I've also bought a 5G dongle that I take with me everywhere. So if I do not have an accident, but I am accident prone, at least I've got.
Yeah, you sound it. You do sound accident prone, I have to say. So if people want to sort of check out your content, Chris,
Yeah.
where do they find you?
So my main one is the YouTube channel. That's the one I like to push because
Hmm.
that's where obviously down the line I'm hoping to monetize. And I know that sounds a bit cliche, but obviously you do this to monetize. It means I can keep doing what I'm
Yeah,
doing,
and get into
and
more
that is
places. Yeah,
that's a lone paranormal. That's a lone paranormal explorer. Even though that's a main title of the YouTube page, a lone paranormal explorer. But obviously, I'm still named the Paranormal Viking. And my funnel pages are the Instagram, the Paranormal Viking, and on TikTok, the Paranormal Viking. I do have some other things like, you know, threads, but I don't really use them much. But they're my main pages where people can find me. Yeah. Um, I've got some I've got some really interesting sites coming up this year.
cool.
That I'm, you know, so I've made a list of say 40 odd sites, but in the pipeline, I've also got, even though I'm a lone paranormal explorer, I do in a pipeline have an exciting collab coming up with I don't know, am I allowed to say a name? I know it's all you know. So basically, her name is Becky. She's a ghost. She basically reads ghost stories. People will send her their experiences of ghost stories.
Okay.
Called the Dark. Yeah, she's called the Darkling Chronicles, and potentially, and I'm hoping that in the next up and coming months, we're going to be sort of doing a collab on a separate YouTube page. So I'm going to be still doing my thing, but then with her, we're going to be this duo team, I suppose. And she's going to be basically the one exactly what you are. She likes to dig into the history of things, and probably throw the cat amongst the pigeons. But she's very that's her attention to detail.
Hmm.
I just bounce along like, you know, the second option and sort of, oh yeah, you know, get the camera going. We've got some really good stuff coming up,
Cool.
and especially some you know, she's interested in shooting up to Scotland.
Wow.
And Yeah, she wants to you know, I want to go to Scotland. There's a quite you've probably heard of it, the is it White Lagan Bothy. There's a bothy in the Trossachs,
Okay.
and it had nothing to do with paranormal. People that go there have nothing to do with paranormal. They basically they basically blog their walks through the mountains and their stays in the blog, and they show people how, like, this is what you need to do ethically. There's apparently ethics that when you stay in bothies, you're meant to adhere to certain rules.
Mm.
But then all of a sudden, chairs will move behind them, doors will close, and they'll hear voices in the other rooms, and they'll go and investigate, and there's no one there. So and
Nice.
then promptly, if that gets too much, they've left. There's been like reports of people leaving bothies at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they'd rather risk the walk of walking through the Trossachs, the mountains, than staying there. So I'm heading up to there as well. There are places that I can't do my POV by lantern light because they're too small.
Mm.
So like, you don't want to just walk into a room and like, it's so I will be doing your standards kind of like GoPro watching me, watching the scenery, etc.
Mm.
Um, but hopefully most of my, if they really find that interesting, like, being put in the frame of being an investigator, that's where I'm heading towards. POV by lantern light. It's just to give people that vibe, that eeriness that you're on your own by lantern light. And then eventually, I've also looked down the route of doing a 360 camera for VR.
Okay.
So, like, when people are watching, even though I'm walking forward, the VR camera, if they want to, they can look behind, look to the side.
Hmm.
So that gives it, again, like,
Wow.
sort of that kind of like eerie sense of like I'm being followed, but they turn around and it could be a door there or something like because I walk through the door. That's it. That's the route I'm going down. So
Sounds
yeah, I've
way
got
too
to.
technical for me. I'll stick to disappearing into archives.
It's the thing is, I thought it was going to be difficult, but it's just a camera. So
Okay.
I have been known to overcomplicate investigations, and I've ended up walking to an investigation with like a rucksack and two or three cases of equipment, and I'm just like,
Hmm.
I want to go back to the old school sort of vibe of investigation of like instead of relying on the equipment, which they are good, they can
Hmm.
help keep the momentum going, but people are now swearing by like if something goes off, it's because it's paranormal.
Hmm.
So I want to go back to the old school days of like when we used to sort of watch the what's the is it the unexplained in the 80s.
Tales of the
So
Unexpected.
no, no, no.
Oh,
I should remember this. Come on, Chris, because these are the programs that I grew up with. But
right.
they're all about just having a camera, going to a location, and they'd call out, and they'd record, and they'd have an EVP. They'd have a digital. Well, it wasn't digital back then. It was a tape player, wasn't it?
Cassette
And they'd
player. Yeah.
yeah, cassette player, and they'd record. And I want to go back to that. I want to sort of, even though I still will use elements of like new technology. It'll just be there as seasoning, salt and pepper
Hmm.
to the whole thing. I'll be relying more on like, sort of building up the atmosphere and making you feel like you're there and walking around, calling out by lantern light. And then sometimes if a piece of equipment goes off, I might react to it in the distance and then I'll go back on track. That's what I'm aiming for. Um, so yeah, if people like that idea, then yeah, they can find me on the
Awesome.
Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Oh,
Much
thank you for having me,
appreciated.
Penny.
The fact now that I am never going to be able to go to Henley again, probably, I don't know if that's a
We'll
good or a
sneak you
bad
in.
thing.
No, no,
Um,
there's a costume shop there. I can buy you one of those hats and moustaches, and we'll sneak you in.
yeah, they'll be like my name. If they like the stuff that I've said to you, my name's Penny. If they don't, it's Jenny. Just to sort of tie that one up. Anyway, I hope you guys all enjoyed that show. Anyone who knows me and has listened to me for a while knows A, I like to find an arsehole in the piece, and B, I do like to put the cat among the pigeons. Luckily, there is only one of me, so I pity anyone else who likes to do that as well. Um, I can't tell you who my next guest is going to be because I haven't booked it yet, but there will be another guest as I'm trying to do these shows every month for you this year. If there's anything particular you'd like to see on Haunted Histories, do let me know. If you've got any questions for Chris, let me know and I'll pass them on to him. But on that note, I hope you have a good rest of the month and thanks for listening. Have a good evening, sleep tight, and don't worry too much about things that go bump in the night.